Hi folks, with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the resources that the globalist-controlled Western nations, the state, is putting at the disposal of the Justice Departments, the NGOs, the activist groups, the various fake front organisations, the resources made available to them to crush anyone who's against the globalist project, or not necessarily directly against the globalist project, but against the central building blocks of the globalist project. One of the key building blocks of the globalist project, of course, is to spread social division and to have white people on the back foot, always having to apologise and beg forgiveness for their wickedness and evilness and their fascist, Nazi, white supremacists and so on. That's a very central part of the globalist project. Whites must be crushed. And when they're crushed, and with them will go democracy, the rule of law, due legal process, the idea of clearly codified law rules by which we can all be governed, and which will be the bedrock of contracts and justice and agreements. All that has to go, but before they can do that effectively, the globalists have to crush and get rid of white people. And social division, particularly where white people are to blame for the social division that the globalists are deliberately inciting and grifting, then that's a very important part. So anyone that fights back against this attempt to spread social division must be crushed, and substantial resources are being put at the disposal of whether it be the Justice Department or so-called Justice Department or not. Now, you've probably all heard about, or many people have heard about the Christian baker. I think it's in Colorado in the United States, and he's had to endure almost endless litigation for something close to 10 years. On the basis, I think, that the first legal case against him was that he refused to adorn with gay graffiti or gay literature. I think to refuse to adorn a cake. I think it might have been a wedding cake with sort of gay slogans and so on. Now, he agreed to sell the gay people any cake in his shop. There was no limit to them buying anything. He agreed to bake the cake. So it came down to whether or not he would adorn the cake with gay symbolism. And he said, no, look, I'm a Christian, I can't do that, but happy to bake the cake for you, or happy for you to buy any cake that's in the shop. But no, this wasn't good enough for the gay activists. They had to go after him with the full force of the law, and various activist groups, sort of NGOs and front groups that are really just globalist fronts, going after the guy. They had to crush him for a few reasons. They wanted a precedent case, but just how dare this straight white male defy Christian as well? How he defy our sense of entitlement, and it's very petty, it's very spiteful, and it was not worthy of a court case in my view. But the very woke government of the state decided that the Department of Prosecutions and the courts decided that they would take it up as a cause du jour and try and crush the baker. Now, the baker in no way had the legal, had the money or the resources to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court, where they had a kind of a partial victory, I guess. But ever since then, any activist group, anything to do with gay, lesbian, transgender, anything at all, they've been after him ever since, and deliberately trying to set up entrapment scenarios simply so they can then take legal action against him. Now he's on another case at the moment. Now, fortunately, there are organisations that are backing him, but you can see here where this is actually a front line of the culture war, where vast sums of money are being spent on both sides, by the way. Vast sums of money are being spent just for the cultural, legal victory precedent type thing, and the crushing of a Christian. And if they win, of course, they can run around saying, look, we crushed the Nazi type thing. And if they lose, they can say the justice system is is all fucked up. So they're playing both sides of it there. But the baker is saying, look, you can have any cake you want. I'm just not going to do your specific, activist propaganda stuff, activist propaganda symbolism. But aside from that, have whatever you want. So I'm intrigued that the matter would even get to court. It's that petty, that spiteful, and that silly, and quite clearly, the game being played by the activists, pro-globalist activists and the pro-social division activists, the grifters and all that sort of thing. It's them just using the courts and the legal system as some toy or plaything for their gratification. And the judges and the courts should throw it out. Now, there's so many activist judges around these days that these activist causes have no trouble finding a court and finding a judge in it that's going to be very sympathetic to their position. It's much tougher when you get to the Supreme Court, where the majority of the judges are constitutionalists and doing their job, that is, interpreting the law. And, looking at the issue of fairness and social justice, I was not long ago, I was at a function, and there were some judges there, and we were just having a sort of a general, shoot the breeze type chit chat. And I mean, this particular judge, he's married to this pink-haired screaming activist, and he's got a view of what he sees is fairness. Now, fairness is code speak in his cognizance, at least, for social justice. So if he sees, the black man and the white man in legal conflict, unless that the case is just absolutely overwhelmingly in one direction, he'll then he would act on the facts. But if it's even 60-40 in favour of the white guy, this judge, and then many others, by the way, sees it as a social justice issue. Why should the white guy win? The black guy's been oppressed for centuries. He hasn't got as much as the white guy. Why don't I declare in favour of the black guy? And that'll sort of create an equal justice outcome and create a better world and create this equity fantasy that these. Now that guy should never be in a fucking court. He shouldn't be anywhere near a court. But the amount of activists, particularly young women, who are coming through with doing law sociology, and they're coming through with their head, and they've done nothing but work as interns and hang around NGOs that are super anti-male, super anti-white man, super anti-Christian, all this sort of stuff, and they're the ones that are now being appearing in the junior judgeships, and they'll be given senior judicial positions in the years to come. So I think it's going to be very hard to find anywhere across the Western world to find a judge that actually interprets the law and the Constitution and that sort of thing. And the globalists know this. They know that through the law, through placing activists within the legal system, that they can effectively achieve the social division that they may not be able to achieve elsewhere, or they can complement this social division. So the judges and so on, and all the people working in and around the courts are effectively now, race and gender and sexuality grifters, and there's more of them every day being appointed to the courts. And you have people like Chuck Schumer in the United States and those sort of Nancy Pelosi celebrating this fact that guess what? We're putting lots of activists into the courts, and isn't that a wonderful thing? Well, no, it's not. Now, once you have a society where there are no rules anymore, one of the things that makes the West rich is the certainty that clear rules, clear codified rules and laws, very clearly codified, and impartially interpreted by an independent judiciary. That's what gives the West a sense of clarity in all things, or many things, more so than any other societies around the world. That is particularly so. Whether it be a contract agreement or the ownership of private property or any of these sorts of things, those laws, the clearly codified laws, give that clarity. Now, what used to be the case was that the governments, when they represented the people, which they don't anymore, they used to have, they really wanted clearly codified laws. They wanted to do that to give as much surety and as much confidence to the society, the community, the business sector, and so on. And this was very important part of people investing in the future, very important part of people investing in the future. And without that clarity, people are less inclined to invest in the future, less inclined to go that extra yard or that extra mile, less inclined to put themselves out, because with the situation now, they view not only are the laws that are being written vague and can have a dollar each way, a buck each way, but the interpretation, the courts are not independent anymore; they're activist, and so, no, well, some are independent, but some judges still treat the law as the law. But increasingly, the judges see the law as simply an activist device to bring about some sort of fantasy of social justice, which means that and the laws being written, the new laws coming out, especially by, say, Merrick Garland's Justice Department, are purposefully vague, so they can pretty much go in any direction they want to convict anybody they want with these very vague laws, which is very much a communist, Soviet Union, China, Cambodia. They would have these very vague laws that are written in very ideological terms, which meant they could go and persecute anyone they wanted. And we need to accept this is what this Christian Baker in Colorado, it is the state actively conspiring with activist groups, NGOs and the like, actively conspiring with them at a judicial level and a political level to persecute this Christian Baker, who's done nothing wrong. He's broken the law. And nor has he attempted to, or nor is that even really the claim. It's that the argument is that he's engaging in some sort of form of discrimination that they don't like, and they want to fucking crush him because of it. How dare he have the right to? And yet these same people, when conservatives are banned from the Twitters or the Facebooks or whatever, they're the same ones. Oh, the private company, they can do what they want. Well, he's a private baker and he can do what he wants. Oh no. This only applies one way. Now, another recent one as well that's worthy of mention is a guy who recently has been acquitted. A guy who was accused of somehow obstructing or inhibiting in some way. It was vague. That they didn't really articulate it very well. But a guy, a straight white Christian male, which is really why they went after him, is supposed to have obstructed in some way people who wanted to go to get an abortion, so in an abortion clinic. Now, he's a pro-life activist. I should add, before I go any further in this, I have no horse in this race. I'm neither for or against abortion. I think if 12-year-old black girls from the projects get pregnant, I think that is a case for abortion personally. But that's only my view, and others, of course, may see it differently. But I have no strong feelings one way or another here. But so the guys, this activist is pro-life activist, is outside the abortion clinic, and he hands out literature to women going in and advising them there are alternatives and there are different sources of information that they can resource, and that's about it. He doesn't stop any from going in or prevent them, far from it. Now, but this is considered outrageous by the activists, the pro-abortion activists, who again are very well supported and thoroughly supported by the NGOs and the globalists and the leftist pro-globalist political establishment. So the abortionists go and lobby the Congress, and they can get Merrick Garland's anti-justice department, there's nothing justice about it, to go after these people. And now, so this activist was advised by a letter that he was the subject or possible subject to investigation, and his lawyers responded that if there was any meeting with the FBI or the Justice Department or any law enforcement authorities, that he would be happy to comply and to attend any interview with law enforcement authorities. All they do is let the lawyers know, we'll make sure he turns up. And you think that would be the end of it. And you think if they did want to talk to him, they would simply advise the lawyers. And remember, the lawyers have said in writing that their client will turn up to any meeting or interview requested by the Justice Department. So all they got to do is pick up the phone or send a letter or an email or something like that, and they could have had him. So, but no, they don't do that. They go up for, and this just shows the malice and the extent to which the Justice Department has been corrupted. And is really, they're not the Justice Department anymore. They're just a bunch of globalist enforcer goons. That's all the fuck they are now. So they send, I think it was a 25 or 27 man SWAT team. Now, SWAT team, they're wearing full body armor, helmets. They've got the automatic weapons. They've got the armored vans. They got the whole 9 yards. So they turn up at this guy's house early in the morning, and he's got quite a big family. He's like got 6 or 7 children or something. His wife there, and they turn up and they're in the door pointing guns at people on the floor and freeze and doing all the big drama stuff. And this is for the sole purpose of bringing him in for an interview, cuffing him and maximum drama and so on. I mean, those evil fucks, seriously. And again, this is something where his lawyers have stated in writing that he'll surrender himself to any interview that they want to have. So anyway, they frog march him out in handcuffs, and then he's released and that sort of thing. So there's a court hearing about now the charges being brought against him are so vague and where they're so imaginative, but given they've got away with this with the January 6th accusations, then they're emboldened to think they can just get away with it, all across the board. Now, I don't know how happy the local Pennsylvania authorities were to this, because the Pennsylvania Justice Department and police had had a look at this earlier and they weren't interested. So the feds picked it up because of the great propaganda value. They figured they could milk it for, a bunch of two-bit grifters. So I don't know how much the local authorities were pleased with this. It's a bit like an appeal court overturning a lower court. The judges don't like it. They don't like the appeal courts having a look at, hey, I've made a decision. I don't know how much support they really got and maybe how serious they were. But anyway, a constitutionalist judge was appointed to hear the case. Now, even though he's appointed during Barack Obama's term, he was to replace a conservative constitutionalist judge that was being, I think, moved to higher court, if my memory serves me correctly. So the tradition is that you replace a conservative with a conservative, that kind of tradition. It's not always followed, but a lot of the time it is. So even though it was Barack Obama, who should have ideally appointed a screaming activist, there was a fairly conservative guy really got put in. Well, not conservative, just constitutionalist. He just believes you interpret the law. You don't look at all this activist ideological bullshit. I'm surprised he didn't throw the case out. But anyway, the case was heard. It was a jury, and they wanted to put this guy away for up to 10 or 11 years, I think the term was. But the evidence was, I thought, the evidence was quite conclusively against any wrongdoing on his part, and the allegation that he was obstructing the doorway was bullshit. The allegation that he was assaulting people was equally bullshit. So he was acquitted. Now, he couldn't have done this. I mean, no way he had the result. I think it went for nearly a week, or did go for a week, the case. Now, the Justice Department, if you look at the SWAT team and so on, and the time that the prosecution took in this, we're talking quite serious money. And legal fees all combined, you'd be looking at totality of $300,000+ for this, all to go and chase some guy who never committed a crime anyway, just to create a martyr, well, not a martyr, just so they can parade around the city walls, this guy that they've persecuted into oblivion. So that was, I think, the intent behind it, given the maximum drama. They do the same with like the Mar-a-Lago thing. It's fucking pathetic. It just shows how petty and useless and spiteful they are, and how much, because they control the media, and how much they think they can get away with this, and how they're just not accountable. So anyway, the guy wins, and he couldn't have done this without a lot of support, and because he's a Christian and everything, he was supported by the Thomas More Foundation, or that's my understanding at least. Now, just a quick sidebar: Thomas More was an English judge, politician, and even was served as the equivalent back in the day of prime minister in the 1500s for King, or late 1400s, it might have been early 1500s, for King Henry VIII. Henry VIII and his 6 wives, that guy. And he was during the time. This was during the time of the Protestant convulsions in Europe, where there was a belief by the Protestants that worshippers should worship God directly rather than through a priest. And the Protestants, interestingly, the Protestants to do that the worshippers had to be able to read the Bible, or it certainly helped. So literacy in the Protestant areas increased out of sight, far beyond anything else around Europe, where really it was only the clergy and the nobility that could read. But this brought reading to anyone that could, and the churches were giving out Bibles, and so they could people could learn to read the Bible. Particularly when the printing presses, Caxton and those guys started churning them out, was able to read the Bible, and thus literacy increased. Therefore, information could be shared. Manuals on how to do more productive farming, for example. So information was able to spread more accurately and far more quickly than in any other societies, and this made a huge difference. So that if you look at the wealthiest countries on the planet, Holland was extremely wealthy. They were Protestant. England was Protestant. Many parts of Germany were Protestant, and of course the United States. And these are the back in the day, and even today, are the richest countries in the world per capita. Are the richest countries in the world. So the Protestant movement, was a real game changer to wealth distribution at the time and subsequently. Now, England went Protestant, but Henry VIII still wanted the Pope to agree to his divorce and give him what was called dispensation to have the divorce. So Thomas More was considered to be one of the leading clerics in England at the time, and the king asked Thomas More to bless his divorce and bless his marriage to Anne Boleyn, I think it was. But he wouldn't do that. He just said, "Well, look, I don't want to get involved in this. If you want a dispensation, you want that, then you must deal with the Pope." Now, one of the problems at the time was that the Spanish princess that Henry wanted to divorce was Spanish, but Spanish troops occupied the Vatican, so the Pope couldn't really do shit without the Spanish king saying so. And the Spanish king said, "Hey, you're not going to have any dispensation on this divorce matter." So the Pope duly didn't. And Henry, frustrated by this, King Henry decided that he would just break with the church and go down the Protestant path. But he still wanted Thomas More to bless the marriage. Thomas More wouldn't. And the king said, "If you don't bless it, I'm going to invent charges against you and have you killed." So anyway, Thomas More was executed simply because he wouldn't bless that. He's become a martyr. There are statues of him in London. He's become a martyr for, if you like, justice and the idea of fighting against injustice, I suppose, would be more to the point. So the Thomas More Society has funded other people, but they came to this Christian guy's aid with all the funding. Without their money, he couldn't afford it, and the state would have won. But I just want to, the process of persecution and the legal process around it is in itself persecution. And I've seen and watched people being persecuted by the state simply because they've defied the state in some small way. The bureaucrats in the state are very petty and spiteful, and they view disagreement or anything like that as outrageous defiance, which must be crushed with the full force of the state. And we see these persecutions, that's what they are. And that's what we've been reduced to in the Western world, that the state is now persecuting people who simply don't share the globalist globalist project or disagree with it, have questions about it, or in some ways they would see it threaten the central tenets of the globalist project. Key among them, of course, being spreading social division. So we need to understand just how much our legal system and the activism of the state has been how the entire legal system has been degraded to a point where it's no longer a justice system. The law is not applied equally at all. The law is applied. If you look at people, say, who are firebombing and damaging and smashing windows of pro-life clinics, then the Justice Department doesn't seem to give a shit. But if someone hands out leaflets anywhere near an abortion clinic, then it requires the full force of the federal Justice Department come after them with SWAT teams and the whole 9 yards. And that just goes to show you how corrupted our justice system has become, and how much is all now that they're just servants and goons of the globalist project. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.